My guest today is Malinda Shultice. I am so excited to have her on. Malinda is a professor at not one, but two universities, right up the road from me at Iowa State University, and all the way across the world at Barcelona Executive Business School. She teaches on things like entrepreneurship, business management, and healthcare management. She's also a licensed nursing home administrator with more than a decade of experience in senior living before she made a big shift into teaching. We're going to talk about that today. After seeing firsthand the challenges of her industry, she launched her own company and became very dedicated in finding solutions, one for healthcare's toughest problems and their highest turnover rates, and also to empower others to be the best that they can be in leadership. I cannot wait for you to hear her story, learn from her, and soak in the powerful insights that she brings to both leadership and communication. Welcome to the Lead with Spark podcast, the show where real women lead with authenticity, show up with presence, and live out their purpose. I'm Lynsey Mulder, speaker, C-suite executive, family gal, travel junkie, and a firm believer that your leadership starts from within. Around here, we go beyond the fluff. We talk about the real stuff no one teaches you in leadership training. Your values, your superpower strengths, boundaries to stop burnout, and how to quit being the chaos coordinator of your own life. Whether you're building a business, leading a team, or just trying to stop feeling stuck in the daily grind, this is your space to get clear, get aligned, and finally lead with confidence. So let's cut the noise and reconnect with the spark that makes you, you. Let's go get our spark on. Welcome, Malinda. I am so glad that you're here today. I'm very excited to chat. I know I've got to know you a little bit already, but our listeners haven't. So why don't you share a little bit about you and all this amazing work that you're doing?
Well, thanks for having me on. This is great. I love being a guest on a podcast whenever I can, and you were a perfect fit for this. So thanks for having me. My name's
Absolutely.
Malinda Shultice, and I'm a professor at Iowa State, and I also teach at a college in Barcelona, Spain. So I teach entrepreneurship, business management, and healthcare management classes at Iowa State, which I think really will tie in perfectly with everything that we get to kind of dive into today. But in addition to that, I also own a consulting company that predominantly helps improve employee morale and try to reduce turnover in healthcare. Because prior to being a teacher or a professor, I was in senior living for 10 years. And so it was a really rigorous time, lived through the pandemic, both pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, all of those things. But I learned a lot and I messed up a lot along the way. And I thought, how can I help other people and help this industry? So I started a company about a year and a half ago. So I completely switched gears. And I'm on this new journey. And so I teach and I own a company on the side. That's a little bit about me.
Yes, I love that. Tell me kind of a little bit about what you thought. That was a big career shift. And
Hmm.
I mean, I know you shared with me kind of your age. It's like you had this whole career and now you're starting a whole new one. What was the thought process? Because I know a lot of our listeners think about that same thing.
Yeah, that's a great question. I like that you asked that because, I got into my first management positions in senior living right out of my undergrad degree, which I was completely ill prepared for. I shouldn't even have been given that job, but the state of Iowa deemed me okay to manage retirement communities and people and people's well-being. But in that same breath, I had to grow up really fast and which also helped to expedite any sort of leadership skill sets that I was lacking because I had to figure it out. No one was coming to save me. I had to figure it out. And I was able to work for nonprofits and for profits. And so I really got a nice view and differentiation of how those worlds look. And it gave me different perspectives. And then, about that 10-year point, I'm in my early 30s now, and I thought I'm either going to continue on this trajectory and I'm going to end up in, the home office level, the senior leadership level. But that used to excite me when I was younger. I'd say probably 5 years into my career, that's what made sense. But then I changed somewhere along the way. And what I thought I wanted was not actually what I wanted. And I was in the position that everyone would deem you being happy in and you should be happy in. And people thought I was nuts for putting this other career, just pivoting. I pivoted and I was trying to chase what I thought would make me happier and be more beneficial to other people because I no longer felt like I was effective in my role, but I didn't feel it anymore. I needed to do something. And I didn't want to wake up, in my 50s, having done this for years with all of this regret. So I thought, you know what? We're going to just make a change. I'm lucky I have a pretty supportive husband. So he was like, you know what? Let's just go do this now. And I literally, there was a 1 week overlap between me closing out this chapter in senior living and teaching at Iowa State. So I was finishing a job and then going to teach, which I was absolutely petrified to do because I had 100 students in a lecture hall staring at me. And I felt imposter syndrome had never been more real. I mean, I knew what I was doing in healthcare, but this was not what I thought I had signed up for. And I ended up leaving the class and I thought, okay, I've made the right decision. And I've never looked back. So it was a hugely and wildly emotional journey. But once I just taking that initial plunge was the worst part. Especially when you are getting paid well.
Oh,
I loved my team in healthcare. There really wasn't anything fundamentally wrong. I just had changed and I needed to do something different. And that's why I said earlier on, I'm still on this journey because I don't know as a business owner if you ever fully arrive. You're always
yep.
evolving, changing. And so I really love that. But academia, I feel like I'm still in the healthcare game enough that I can help these upcoming people be more prepared for the field than I was. If I can help that at all,
Yeah.
that's the goal. So
Yeah.
that it was an emotional journey and still emotional, but I am better for having shifted and done something different.
Yeah. You touched on so many things there. You touched on the fact that there's no blueprint for leadership, and we're going to talk about
Mm,
that a little bit more. You talked about the fact of being bold and recognizing within yourself when something has shifted.
yeah.
And it's so crazy because so many people think I had this mission and this is what I need to do, but we have new experiences. We meet new people, our
Mhm.
lives change, and in our gut, we can tell when that shift needs to take place and we need to go for it. But yet so many people are scared. Like you talked about
Mhm.
the handcuffs of money and our bonus that's coming in February or March. We don't want to leave that. And
Mhm.
yet we stay in these positions where we're not necessarily fulfilled and might have this thing that is so much better on the other side, but it's really scary to
Yeah.
go after it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love where you're positioning your new business because you're coming into the core of the ripple effect that impacts people personally and professionally by
Hmm.
really honing in on that leadership role. Can you talk
Yeah.
that? Tell me a little, I mean, just share with people a little bit more about that.
I didn't want to, jump right into all of the stereotypical things that exist about leadership. I really looked at the journeys of myself and those around me that I watched struggle in healthcare, especially. And a couple of the things, one of the really cool things that I get to teach at Iowa State is entrepreneurship. And the first module that we jump into is reigniting that creativity flow that so many of these college students have already lost. Some of them may be only 18, 19 years old, and they've lost that spark just because of life, just like the rest of us. And so, one of those first things that we tackle is turning that back on, because as an entrepreneur, you have to have some sense of creativity because, like you said, there's no blueprint. You just have to go with it, and no 2 days are going to really look the same. And so then it really got me thinking, okay, but curiosity is one of the things that died out in me throughout my 10-year period because I had deadlines, I had care conferences, tough conversations with team members and family members, and it was hard to come home and also explain the job and the rigors that I was dealing with to my husband, who, if no one's in that healthcare world, they sometimes just don't get it, and that's okay. It's just you start to kind of suffer in silence, and I thought, how can I reignite these basic inherent qualities that we have to make us better leaders? And so
Mm.
curiosity and creativity really lies at the core of what I try to help people to reignite, because we're all born with it, at least to some degree. Some are much more than others, but we lose that along the way. So I really have honed in on those elements of leadership. The other piece too, and survived is probably a bit melodramatic, but I survived senior living in the role that I had that has over 100% turnover because it's so rough. Um, because I was able to lead in a compassionate, empathetic element. And I know those are two difficult words when
Mm.
it comes to leadership. But I really tried to fine tune the soft skills, which actually in turn are not all that soft. Those are hard skills,
Yeah.
which is kind of a funny
Such a
way to
myth.
look at it. Yes, those soft skills are really hard to fine tune. So that's the other thing that I really kind of jump into with leadership is helping people to become more empathetic and curious leaders so that maybe I can help them not feel the way that I did, or maybe
Mm.
help them if they do want to take that plunge, feel a little less petrified that it will be okay if you lean into those different elements of leadership because they're really transferable in so many different industries. You can leave one and go into another as long as you have these basic core values, kind of tapped into as a leader.
Yeah.
So those are really my areas of focus.
Yeah, I talk to a lot of recruiters and they will say, we can teach people the basics all day long, but you can't
Mhm.
teach people empathy and
Mhm.
curiosity and compassion and all of those communication skills, all those things that you're honing in on right now.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you just hit the nail on the head. It's so communication based. It's how we relate with others and connect. And that's, you know, we're given those tools and those skill sets, but Um, we lose those along the way for a number of reasons, but also some people just, they lose that sense of how to effectively communicate just from human to human. It doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily have to be that hierarchical, boss to direct report. I mean, we're all just people trying to accomplish a similar goal within an organization, but we lose sight of that sometimes. So how can we effectively communicate across barriers and through barriers that we have? And that's, yeah, you absolutely hit the nail on the head. It's so communications based.
Yeah, yeah. Can you break those two components down for us? So tell me a little bit more about just curiosity, because people will tell me all the time, well, I ask good questions, but
Mm-hmm.
yet their minds are closed. And I know just in
Yeah.
the way that they say it, what's happening. So
Yes.
how do you think about curiosity and maybe teach people that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I, again, didn't think through all of the things until after I had a moment to think leaving my healthcare job about what it takes to be a curious leader and what it takes to be a compassionate, empathetic listener, and really at the core of them. So, curiosity stems from this root of actually wanting to know what the other person is thinking and not just,
Mm.
as leaders, oftentimes we're asking questions that are closed ended because we just need an answer and we need to move on. We're busy, that other person's busy. And instead of taking 2 to 3 minutes and actually just listening actively, so, because that's what needs to happen in order for that curiosity spark to kind of ping a little bit. We need to pause long enough to hear what the other person is saying. And I have a phrase that I say, we need to care enough to hear someone's story within their story. And that
Mhm.
does not need to take 25 minutes because no one has 25 minutes to just give in most cases. So really that curiosity spark needs to begin with being an active listener in that moment. And so that kind of segues a little bit into though that compassionate leadership piece because that also ties in with you may not realize it, but that is being an empathetic leader to some degree and an emotionally intelligent leader. And sometimes as leaders, we don't recognize how big those moments are for people if we can just give them even a couple minutes of our time. But it also fills our cup as a leader. So it helps that curiosity piece. So curiosity, really at the root of it, is being open to listening to that other person, whether you decide to use their idea
Mhm.
or not, but just connecting with that person. And so, and we might jump into this here in a little bit, but I really took a deep dive into this idea methodology, which is a basic conversation platform for people And this is what's fun to do in workshops because I give them an active listening exercise. Some people love it and some people just want to run away from me. They
Yeah.
can't get away from me fast enough.
Yeah.
But the acronym is IDEA, and it is, you introduce yourself to a person. You say, "Hi, my name's Malinda. Nice to meet you, Lynsey." You get to the D, and that's the discovery method. That's when when you're having this small talk moment with someone, that's when you can pick up on something they've said, and that's how you can dig a little bit deeper. That's kind of your into the
Okay.
conversation.
All right.
So you can kind of figure out a way to connect with that person after they've said, after the basics, "Hey, my name's Melinda. What's the weather like today?" We do all those basic small
Yeah.
talk things.
And
Once
then
we
you
get
try to
past
find
that,
that common nugget
yes,
between the two
yes.
of you.
The
Yeah.
D is the commonality. So the D is where we actually start to discover a little bit of who that person is. And then you get to the E, which is the exploratory portion of it. And that's when you really start to get to the heart of the matter of what it is that the person is wanting to talk with you about, even if it's someone you don't know. Because people are pretty apt to talk if they know that the person is actively listening that they're speaking with. And
Yeah.
then, the final piece, and this is huge for a leader, is the A part. This is the application because so often as a leader, we are busy answering questions for everyone else. We're thinking for others. We're constantly just on our toes trying to pivot and solve the next problem. But we're not always great as leaders at holding other people accountable for
Mm.
those elements of a conversation where they can walk away with a task and we don't. Because that's one of the things that I reflected on when I left is I was kind of an enabler. Um, and I noticed that somehow people would come to me and I would have this, I was accidentally doing the idea methodology without realizing it anyway. The A part was always missing for me, the accountability and the application piece, because somehow or other people would leave a conversation with me, even if it was 2 or 3 minutes long, and I had something then on my to-do list to do, rather than it being a task that they could probably tackle. Um,
Yeah.
and so that method, so that A part is huge because it helps us to empower and get our teams to be more accountable as individuals. And this really doesn't have to take all that much time, but it really can save a lot of that burnout, that low morale, helps to reignite that curiosity. So it really ties into just being a more effective communicator and taking a couple of moments to actively listen to what it is they're saying. But we don't always have to, as the leader, leave with some sense of responsibility from the conversation. We can empower the other person to do so. So
Yeah,
that's
I
kind of,
think that's really important. The A, people don't realize when you're giving that A away, you're probably creating a new skill set in someone. You're giving them stretch opportunities. You're
yes.
empowering them. They have this sense of ownership about them when they can take accountability for those
Yep.
pieces rather than us just adding to our plates.
Yes. And that's really what ties into that curiosity piece too, because this is a very effective communication and compassionate leadership method, but it also helps it frees up your time to be a more curious leader because you're not constantly problem solving and for everyone else.
Mhm.
And then you're also empowering them, like you said, to be a better and more effective individual in their sphere of influence because maybe they're learning a new skill set, or maybe it's just challenging them to have to go figure out the problem without constantly leaning on the leader. And that's okay because then we're teaching them critical thinking and problem solving skill sets.
Yes.
And so, these that might sound simplistic, and this really is simplistic, but we're not always great at the execution piece of this as a leader because we're all busy and we don't think we have time for it in a day. And so, yeah, it's that curiosity piece accidentally gets ignited throughout this process because we've cleared up time for that creativity and that curiosity to actually be, which is really great.
Yeah. How does a leader know when they're not being curious?
The Sunday scaries. I'm going to start with that. I
Okay.
read so much about people that you're not always going to feel 100% excited to go into work. That's just not reality.
Right.
But when you start to feel that doom in your stomach, or, when people walk into your office and you feel like, oh, do I have to deal with this person today? I don't know if I have it in me. And you're really starting to, when you have a moment and your mind starts to wander, Where does your mind wander to? Is it to these places of you trying to escape to do something else, or you're thinking about what's next, as far as you're excited at the prospect of getting to go home to work on your side hustle? Are you feeling empowered when you go to work that you are also being invested in to grow as both a leader and an individual? Because we are inherently always going to want to be invested in personally and professionally. And so when those things start to die out and you're starting to go through the motions and you are finding yourself a little bit reclusive to wanting to connect with others, especially in a leadership role, you cannot avoid people in most cases. And when you can start to feel,
If you can, you're not in the right role.
yeah, that's when you probably should reevaluate altogether.
Yes.
But those basic necessities of excitement or any sense of joy that you had throughout the day from the little things started to dissipate, that's when you need to reevaluate, because that curiosity has gone out for probably various reasons. And how can you figure out, maybe some people want to figure out how to reignite that without leaving their job? Because honestly, maybe had I been better about this idea methodology and recognizing it in the moment, maybe I would still be in healthcare. I might have saved my own self, but other people then might also get to the point where I recognized it was time to do something new, and that's okay. But we cripple ourselves because we get scared, and it is scary. But there also has to come this moment of realization that I got more scared to stay put where I was than to take the plunge. And that's when you have to give yourself permission, no matter what that looks like. You owe it to your curious self to go try plan B. But the important thing is to know is you don't have to leave your position to re-spark this curiosity. You can do this in a way that, again, just a few of these conversations per day might give you your cup to be filled enough to
Mm-hmm.
reignite your why about why you show up to work every day. And it helps you to connect better with your team. And it really just it helps you want to be there on the days especially that you don't feel like you want to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. I've found when I go into companies and I start working people, I can tell when they've lost curiosity and compassion because their own plates are too full. Their
Hmm.
team won't do anything without direction,
Hmm.
or little things like I'll ask them questions about their team members and they won't have any clue because they
Hmm.
haven't asked and invested in
Yeah.
time with them. So
Yeah.
it can be a lot of different ways that you figure it out.
Yeah.
But once you do, it's eye-opening to what your leadership can take off and accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we don't have to we're in this phase right now where there's people leading that are of all different demographics and ages. And it's kind of interesting to see the differences in leadership styles from one generation to the next. But the way that we are, from the seat that I'm sitting in right now, and teaching the younger demographic of individuals right now, they're going to always want that invested sense of
Yeah.
growth and that relationship. And in order to attract these up and coming generations, we're going to have to acclimate to these shifts of thinking, even though it might feel like
Yeah.
I've never led like this and I'm not really interested in it, but we have to evolve and change with the times in order to be more effective leaders. And
Yeah.
it really does lie so much within these skill sets that they're not they're not training checklists that they're not tasks you can check off. These are active things that you have to work on every single day. But the nice thing is once you actually invest in this, you become a better person or personally too. It bleeds into every area
Yes.
of your life. And so things that you maybe were not finding fulfilling in your personal life, maybe you are, because you're better able to connect in an authentic way that you weren't before because you were bogged down thinking about work, or you were stressed about this, or you were dreading that. So that's the nice thing about this is it's really all encompassing for every area of your life.
Oh, I
And
couldn't agree more.
yeah,
Yes. So
yeah,
having said that, what's one or two things that our friends listening could do right away to put this into practice and create that ripple effect?
yeah. So one of the things that I tell very busy executives, especially when I see their calendars and they have like 5 minutes blocked out for lunch, or maybe they're
Yeah.
eating while they're
Or not at
I ate
all.
while I did
There's
lunch. Yeah,
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 three
exactly. I was
meetings at
lucky
that
some
time.
days if I
Yeah.
drank water, which sounds pathetic, but it's the truth. Um, one of the things that two of the things I challenge or would challenge them to do is try to find 2 to 3 people that maybe you don't know that well and try this active listening method with them. And it honestly just take 3 to 5 minutes. And it doesn't have to be this in-depth conversation. You don't have to solve the world's problems by the end of it. You just have to tell your brain to actively listen. And when I say actively listen, that does not mean thinking about the 14 things you need to do when you get back
Right.
to your office. You need to be engaged in the conversation and actually hear what it is they're saying. And maybe you don't get to the A part, and maybe neither of you walk away with some task to do. But you need to start training your brain to stop the busy talk up here while you're listening to someone. Because if you can break that habit, you accidentally become an active listener in almost every conversation you have, whether you want to or not. So
Yeah.
I would challenge leaders, for one, try to have 2 or 3 of those conversations in a day. Because you'd be amazed how like great that person's going to respond, but also you yourself. The other thing is to, and I had a CEO that I worked for that did this, and this might be a little bit of a stretch, but I always challenge leaders. He always had this blocked out time, and it was only a week or an hour once a week on his schedule. And
Okay.
that would be his brain dump, brain think time. And he wouldn't have his electronics around him. He would just go and brainstorm, think, be curious, maybe go for a walk while he did it, but everyone knew not to schedule anything during that time. And he was gifting himself a moment of tapping back into that curiosity, that creativity, where it was not, he wasn't bothered by anything else in our external world that can take that away from us. And so, if you can gift yourself, maybe as a leader, starting with 30 minutes is more reasonable. Because sometimes, like I said, we don't even get to drink water throughout the day. So, how am I going to
Yeah.
ask you to set aside
Yeah.
an hour once a week? But setting aside 30 minutes to just quietly put your phone on silent, shut your computer down, maybe go for a quick walk, and just spend some time letting your brain wander, because that's how you can actually reignite that curiosity that is deadened, because we never actually give ourselves a moment to just be.
Yeah.
You'd be amazed gifting yourself 30 minutes, what that can do each week, for your own sanity and for yourself as a leader. So those would be the 2 actionable items I would challenge people to try. You don't have to buy anything, you don't have to do anything, you just have to be
They're
present.
free.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
free. They're the
Yeah.
best. They're free tips.
Yes. And I know our listeners like to go above and beyond. So I think 60 minutes is fine. And I say
That's
that
great.
because for most of us women in leadership, it takes us 30 minutes just to clear all the chaos happening.
Yes.
I mean, we're thinking about laundry and dishes and what time we have to pick up the kids and is the food in the crock pot or not? Did
Yes.
I start that? I can't remember. Not to mention the rest of the meetings for the day, the emails stacking up, the text messages, all of the things that your employees have going on. So that first half an hour is really clearing the chaos.
Mm-hmm.
The second half an hour is where you can start to get creative and your mind will start to even subconsciously solve things. I mean,
Yes.
what a gift just like you said, what a gift you can give to yourself. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. And if we can find an intentional time to do it each week, then it just becomes part of our habit.
Yeah.
And if we can habit stack those sorts of things in our life, it really just permeates into every facet of who you are and who you want to be. And it's really refreshing. And it doesn't have to take all day, and you don't have to pay tons of money to someone to help solve your problems. You're kind of solving your own problems by giving yourself just some time.
Exactly. Yes, yes. Well, I know you do events all over for different companies, but
Yeah.
I'm always curious, like, what is probably the biggest aha that you love that people get from your events?
My favorite aha is when I ask people to actually pair up with the person next to them. And sometimes they know that person and sometimes they don't. So those of you that have not sat into my workshops, be your forewarned right now.
Yeah, exactly.
I ask people to, one person's the listener and one person is the talker. And for 5 minutes, I ask them, what's your favorite book, your favorite movie, or your favorite restaurant? That's what the listener will ask the talker. The talker will talk for 5 minutes. And then they switch roles. And the person listening cannot give their opinion. They cannot give a statement, and they have to try to ask open-ended questions. And so then we switch after that. And just in a 10-minute time period, the biggest aha moment is one, most people have not been listened to in so long, even for a short period of time, that they feel absolutely liberated.
Yeah.
Like you can see the weight. If you could see weight in a room, the room would be just full of it. Because it's liberating to just feel heard as a human being on a basic level.
Yeah.
The
And
other
that's
thing,
weight as far as heaviness, not weight as far
yes,
as time. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Weight
Because
as
we
far as
also
happiness.
see I do something similar in some of my workshops, and you see that pause. People will talk for 30 seconds,
Mm-hmm.
but we're so used to only having that short amount of time that then
Yes,
they will pause and look around like, wait,
yes,
I have to talk for 4.5 more minutes.
yes,
Yes. So
yes.
it's not only the weight of the heaviness, but the weight of, oh, I actually get to keep going.
I get
Somebody's
to do
gonna
this.
listen to me.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And the other aha moment is for people that would rather die inside when I ask them to do this, because some will tell me that was the longest 5 minutes
Of their
of
life.
my life. I don't know how to talk for that long because oftentimes what I hear is they're so used to their time always being taken from them.
Yes.
They don't ever get the moment just to do that. And so people are uncomfortable because they don't know what to do with that time because oftentimes it's taken from them and they're used to that. And
Yeah.
so it's on both sides of the equation that I see these aha moments, but people, the feedback that I get, even from the uncomfortable people, they love it because they've never been asked to do that before. And it's honestly just basic conversation.
Right.
But taking it back to that basic, like I said, is not always so basic for people to put into their day to day because we're busy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so those are the two big aha moments that I see
I
happen
love that.
is
Yeah.
just people having a moment long enough to be able to talk for 5 minutes. The other thing is if the person is the chronic talker, oh boy, having to listen for 5 minutes, it almost kills some people. You can see it on their face. You can see them just about to burst. And that is very telling for them when they walk away from a workshop. I need to be a better listener because
Yeah.
not everyone always is going to have the right answer. Not everyone is always going to want to solicit that person's advice or their opinions. There's just so many people that are willing to give it regardless.
Right.
They've always been given that space to do so or have for a very long time. So there's a lot of different angles that can be aha moments from these, but I would say that exercise
That's awesome.
has multiple aha moments that
Yeah. Yeah. And I find I love that we have natural communication and natural learning styles. But the best employees, the best leaders, the best listeners, the people that create the biggest ripple effect, all of that are those that can adapt to the
Mhm.
style of the other person. So
Yes.
that little interaction, like you talked about, those expressives that they just can't wait to talk and they want to share and share and share, it's really good for them to adapt to learning how to listen and be
Hmm.
curious in that listening rather
Hmm.
than just bubbling over onto someone else. We love
Yes.
their personalities and they keep the energy high, but it's good to learn those adaptive skills, and that's a great
Yes.
exercise to do that in. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've had so many different elements of your career. I mean, starting out young and figuring out how to be a leader to start with, and then,
Hmm.
doing it and being successful, and now moving into teaching other people. I'm curious, what's one thing that you now know with all of your wisdom? What's one thing that you wish you would have put into action earlier?
I always knew, and all the reports say this, and all the academic reports and professional reports talk about the necessity of being an effective communicator.
Mm.
Um, but I didn't actually really know what that meant. And I wished that I would have recognized the weight of this and the positive weight of this that this carries with it. If you can be more intentional about how you communicate as a leader, because almost 9 times out of 10, if you look at where companies or industries, regardless, healthcare or not, doesn't matter. So much of it revolves around, miscommunication on different
70%.
and it's not shocking to me. And I understand how, now that I have made it through to the other side and I've pivoted, there were so many things that I could have done better and recognized as a communicator, and I could have empowered my team to do so. And so that would have been the one thing that I wished that I would have taken the time to better understand the gravity that it holds. And it's not frivolous, and I'm not wasting time by connecting with my team. It's just that helps to realign everyone working towards the same goal. And I didn't recognize that honestly until probably the end of my career as I was transitioning out and trying to do something different. And I wished that I would have understood that better.
Yeah,
And so it's
yeah.
just so basic, but effective communication and what that means to me and my team. And I wish I would have been better about that. That would have been wildly beneficial for me.
Yes. And I really believe that's something we learn every day for the rest of our life, because
Hmm.
we're meeting new people, we're communicating differently. This technology world that we're in today, that wasn't in place when I became a leader. So that communication has evolved,
Hmm.
moving into the pandemic and remote, that's changed. It's taken away almost all of our nonverbals. We have to
Yes.
learn to communicate differently. So even people that are great communicators should
Hmm.
continue to evolve and learn those
Yes.
communication techniques.
And
Absolutely.
the other thing is too, that's a great point. And that's the other thing too in all of this is with the introduction of Chat GPT and AI and all of that, it will be more important now than ever that we continue to hone in on these communication skills, because no software or technology is ever going to replace that emotional connection that people have. It will never be able to accomplish that. It may craft a beautifully professionally sounding email or LinkedIn post or a paper for a student, let's
Yes.
be
And
honest.
it can even
But
AI your voice, but it's
yes, it
not
will never be this.
right.
And we have to recognize that as leaders, we have to continue to focus on that, because that will never be replaced by any sort of software.
Yeah.
And that's
So
really,
true. So
yeah.
true. Yeah. What's one message you want to leave with our friends today? What's one thing that bubbles up and that you want them to know?
Please recognize the importance of just taking a moment to listen to those around you. And, with how difficult our world is on so many different spectrums and scales and all of that, most people can connect on some level, regardless of age, demographic, any of that. Just taking a moment to listen to those around us and gift ourselves that time to be listened to as
Yeah.
well, um, carries so much positivity out into this world that we don't even recognize, nor can we measure the great effects that we're putting out there, um, by giving ourselves that space, but also giving other people that space to
Yes.
talk and just
Yeah.
feel heard. So it just really comes back to that communication element of gifting ourselves that, because we strip ourselves of that. And we can accidentally reignite that curiosity bulb that has burned out a long time ago, even if we don't realize it's burned out or we think it's still intact. This can help to ensure that you're still staying curious about yourself and about those that you are around as well.
Yeah. I love the thought and the image of that unseen ripple effect that you're creating. You
Yes.
won't know that you've even done it,
No,
but it's happening.
it is. It
Yeah.
is. It
Yeah.
is.
Yes. Okay, just for fun, because I'm a travel junkie. So I like to ask people, what is one place that I should go visit? But more importantly, what should I do when I get there?
Mm. We just came back from Iceland about a month ago. We took my
Oh,
husband and my 8-year-old daughter. We went. She's gone to a lot of places. Whether she's wanted to go, she's been drugged from one
yep.
country to the next. We went in the end of June because they had the midnight sun, and it's a thing. It never gets dark there. But I would land and I would go drive to the Highland area of
Okay.
Iceland, because that's where all the puffins are. and they only are there mating for a specific period of time. And you can see puffins galore, and it's broad daylight at midnight, and it is magical. You can't even make it up. It
Ah,
feels otherworldly. So that would be my suggestion,
okay.
to go to Iceland, find some puffins because they like to be near the ocean and the rocky cliffs, and enjoy it at 11 o'clock at night because it's broad daylight.
All right, I'm adding it to my bucket list. I have not done that yet. Well,
It
this
was
has
incredible.
been amazing. Thank you so much for coming. I know I'm going to link your LinkedIn information in the show notes for everybody because everybody should be inviting you to their company for a workshop.
Mhm.
I mean, the things that you offer are irreplaceable in our world today, and
Yeah.
everybody needs it. So,
Yes.
thank you so much for coming. And to our listeners, I'll see you next time. Make sure you're creating the spark in your life. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for being here and for doing the work to lead yourself first. If this episode sparked something for you, take a second to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with another woman who's ready to own her leadership. And remember, the way you lead your life is the way you lead everything else. If you or your organization are looking for a speaker, an impactful workshop, or an executive coach, head over to lynseymoulder.com and let's connect. Keep showing up. Keep leading with spark. You got this. I'll see you next time.